Hi, my name is CJ. I have no following, no audience, no reach on the internet. All I have is a deep desire and need to keep my country from becoming a full-blown fascist authoritarian dictatorship. If you are also in that same camp, aka the pro-democracy camp, I really ask that you try and stick with me through this one, even though it'll be a long one. I'm not going to be speaking. I have a BA in English writing and rhetoric, so I'm not an expert in these topics, but Dan Nexon is, and I'm going to be reading a thread that he posted just a few hours ago today, and it's a long one, but it's one that all of us should listen and hear. He is a professor at Georgetown University in the Department of Government and the School of Foreign Service. And he, by his own words, studies international order, power, politics, and empires. And he has written multiple books on it. So I think he kind of knows what he's talking about. So he doesn't have a TikTok, so I am going to bring his words from BlueSky over here. And I just think they should be shared as widely as possible. He entitled the thread, Authoritarianism, Democratization, and Coalition Politics. The consensus around here is, more or less, that the United States is currently a consolidating authoritarian regime controlled by a mix of reactionary populists and fascists. This consensus is correct. But I don't think enough people have actually internalized the implications. That is, they're perfectly happy to point out that too many Democrat officials don't understand this, but they haven't updated their own understanding of what this means for taking the country back. Let's start with the best scenario right now, that the US remains a competitive authoritarian system. We have elections that are unfree and unfair, but not total and complete shams. This means that, 1, it will be difficult, but not impossible, for the opposition to win elections, and 2, if the government overtly steals an election, it can be toppled via widespread popular mobilization if the security services split or abandon the regime. We have decades of scholarship on how pro-democracy forces win in competitive authoritarian systems. They form a united opposition that brings together people with otherwise profound political disagreements. One of the many ways the regime fights back is to try and use its considerable resources to wedge apart these coalitions, and it often succeeds, because it is very hard to hold together politically diverse coalitions, even when elections are free and fair. I have bad news and worse news. The bad news: the more consolidated the authoritarian regime becomes, the harder it is to dislodge it. The opposition in Hungary finally got its act together in 2022 and formed a coalition that included far-right and far-left parties. But it was too late. To understand what happened, you must read this article from the Journal of Democracy. I'll put a screenshot here, and it's titled, How Viktor Orban Wins. The worst news: the bulk of successful cases had a white knight, an international power who facilitated the regime transition through some combination of pressure, brokering deals, and carrots. And guess who that white knight usually was? And then he posted a gif of the American flag. So there's a lot of uncertainty about how free and fair the 2026 midterms are going to be. If you forced me to speculate, my low confidence prediction is that they'll be less free and much less fair than in 2024. 1. We will still have an on-balance independent media. The mainstream media will be subject to state coercion, some of it successful, but it will also continue to break stories that are damaging to the regime. 2. GOP states will continue to aggressively gerrymander. When all is said and done, Democrats will be able to offset some of this, but not all of it. The GOP will still likely lose the House, but keep in mind that we're in a long-term existential struggle. Bigger majorities are better than smaller ones. 3. GOP states will also ratchet up voter suppression, with help from the Department of Justice and the Supreme Court. Expect some very aggressive efforts. We won't be able to stop them, but there is a non-zero chance that they miscalculate and drive angry voters to the polls. Put differently, if A, what we're looking at is an unfair playing field but plus or minus free elections, and B, the regime faces a unified opposition, Democrats have a decent chance of taking the House. I am also cautiously optimistic about the Senate, but I wouldn't bet money. And then he linked to Jonathan Bernstein's Substack and his post on why the special elections recently that Democrats have won matter. Taking one or both chamber may be enough to slow down, let alone stop the consolidation of authoritarianism. But if the GOP holds, then all else equal, democracy is fucked. It'll also really matter that the Democrats do well at the state level. The fewer states that are laboratories for autocracy, the better. Right now, we're talking about the best case scenario. It requires a lot of things to fall into place. A lot of those things are outside the control of Democratic officials and politicians. and even more are outside of our control. There are things we can influence, of course. Most of what we can do right now is prepare, especially for participation in collective mobilization against the regime. And here I mean everything from becoming involved in local politics and civil society to learning the tactics of mass protest. We also have some limited ability to influence how unified the pro-democracy coalition is. Remember, competitive authoritarian regimes rely on divide and rule tactics. The sooner the opposition unifies, the better the odds of dislodging autocratic rulers. Wedge strategies are also a time-honored feature of routine democratic politics. Everyone uses them. My point is simply that stakes are different. We are not in routine democratic politics. There's no point in punishing the nominee of the opposition for stances that we consider beyond the pale, let alone ones that are problematic. The logic of teaching them a lesson presupposes that we will have a system in which the opposition can even win elections. Pro-democracy politicians will fail if they don't have the space to form alliances with people who don't share our beliefs and room to blunt successful wedge issues. That sucks. But it's the truth. The choice is between a small d democratic coalition, one in which the majority either supports or is sympathetic to the causes we're talking about, and a fascist authoritarian regime that will use every tool at its disposal, including violence, to suppress vulnerable others. It gets worse. Even if the Democrats win the midterms, we should not expect a peaceful transfer of legislative power. The kind of people who stopped Trump from declaring martial law, seizing voting machines, arresting opposition leaders, they're all gone. They've been replaced with sycophants and true believers. The security services are being purged. Thanks to the big beautiful bill, the regime now has its very own NKVD. Each day, more true believers will join its ranks. If we are going to prevail against them, we need as large an opposition tent as we can get. We need disciplined counter-mobilization. That means protests where SJP doesn't get on stage and tell people that if they don't support destruction of the state of Israel, then they need to go home. We should expect the regime, with the help from Russia and other foreign actors, to engage in an active measure to stoke tensions within the opposition. They will accuse us of being foreign agents. They will attempt to infiltrate the opposition with the aim of radicalizing and discrediting it. But remember, none of this requires that we abandon the causes we believe in. None of this requires backing candidates we don't trust in nomination contests. I do mean trust. We don't need politicians to say all the right things. We need them to do the right things more often than not. There are virtues to working with people you otherwise disagree with. It's much harder, for example, for people to other religious, sexual, ethnic, and racial minorities when they spend time working with them as allies. It is no accident that the authoritarian right now wages a war against empathy. And that gets at a larger point. Competitive authoritarian regimes benefit from reduced social trust, which is why they actively try to destroy it. They want people hived off into antagonistic groups. They want people to believe that they can't form cross-cutting social ties. And they want people to see all institutions everywhere as internally compromised. I don't think that people should abandon fighting for their rights or the rights of others. We all want to defeat reactionary authoritarianism and replace it with a new, better pluralist democracy. Pluralist democracy is hard. It was too hard for MAGA and the post-liberals. We haven't lost yet, but we are losing. And no one, I mean no one, has figured this out. So we've got politicians who think the only way to expand the coalition is to triangulate, and we've got ones who think what matters more is having the courage of your convictions. I don't know what the correct balance is, but I do know that we need to expand the pro-democracy coalition, and I suspect that this will require approaches that abandon the stigmatization of allies and potential allies in favor of empathy and persuasion. It would be nice if, in this limited respect, power political necessity and Republican small r virtues align, because the rules are shredded, the norms are gone, and our institutions are subverted. We are in a power political struggle between fascist authoritarianism and pluralist democracy, period. Go follow Dan Nexon on BlueSky. He's at DHNEXON.bsky.social.